time out of your evening to join us wherever you are. If it's your first time to our Newcastle user group, then welcome. And if you're returning, even better. Really cool to see so many people around the world here as well. I think that's brilliant. We're more than open for you attending our events from different places, and it'll be really interesting to get to know you guys and hear what's happening. So I'm really excited for tonight's event, both for the speaker that we've got for the event and also for the topic as well. Me and Mark have wanted to do a session on Einstein for a little while now, so I'm really glad to see it happen. To be honest, I think for me personally, with analytics and business intelligence and data and reporting, I think we spend so much time on building systems and working in Salesforce to optimize data entry. I think it's oh sorry, I'll just share this with you. I think it's really cool that we can use analytics to be able to tell those stories. So we spend all that time on collecting data, managing data, using data. And I think personally, I'm just really interested in analytics and intelligence and a platform with being able to share information. So selfishly, I'm very excited for the topic tonight. And also, I think it's a great one to bring to you guys as well. So that's really good. So if you just bear with me a second while I get on the screen share. We will be recording the session tonight. So if you do not wish to be recorded, just please ensure that your camera's turned off. I can see everyone's microphone's muted anyway, that's good. But if you, like I say, if you don't wish to be recorded, please just turn your camera off. We will look to sort of edit the recording after. And again, if you change your mind between now and the event, please just reach out to Mark. And you can see Mark's contact details just on this slide there. So just to go over a high level agenda of what we're going to do today. Obviously, we're just doing welcome and introductions as we speak now. We've got just a little icebreaker topic to get us moving, which Mark Jones, who's the co-lead of the group, hopefully many of you have seen him before, but Mark will lead the icebreaker event. And then we come into the main event itself and the meat of the topic behind the call today. And then we've just got some closing announcements, etc. And we'll share the events. So before we introduce the main event itself, Mark, I will stop sharing my screen and just hand over to you just for the icebreaker.
Great. Cheers, Luke. So hello everybody, as Luke said, I'm Mark, I'm co-leader of the group. I'm going to share my screen with you now, but we are going to do a Salesforce game of Would You Rather. And how this is going to work is quite simple. If you, on any device that you're on, if you go to menti.com and you type in the code 1171 305 at menti.com, it'll take you into the quiz, and basically all you was going to be asked is to vote on what you see on the screen. So we've already got votes coming in, and if we can keep these coming in thick and fast, that would be really good, and it'd be just interesting to see kind of what's happening. So the first one, as you can see on screen, is lightning or classic. And I'm going to give it a little bit more time to see how that's coming through. And if Luke if you can keep an eye on the chat, see if anything, just let me know if anything comes through that's relevant for this.
Yeah.
So I can't see the chat. So we've got the 18 lightning to classic. Sure, Salesforce would be very happy with that. which is good. So 18 to 3, lightning to classic. So
no competition on that one.
Gonna skip over to the next one, which is workflow rules or process builder. So if you had your choice of which one to use, which one would you go for? Quite a few coming in for process builder.
Wonder if we'll hit any 50-50s. It's too one-sided so far.
And again, it looks like it's about the same as well. Okay, So if we go on to the next one is reports and dashboards or Einstein Analytics. And Einstein's winning ahead of the curve at the moment. 11-3, 11-4.
Oh, nice. It'd be good to see
this one could be the 50-50 one, almost.
Could be, but it might change after the meeting.
It might do. So 15-7. That's quite good numbers. So interesting enough, if you've used Einstein Analytics before, why not in the chat section at some point during the meeting put in what you think is great about Einstein to help those of us who haven't used it maybe try and convince our bosses to sign up for Einstein. Okay, so the next one is Kanban view or split list views. See what people think.
Nice. Kanban's a strong visual contender, isn't it? It's very good for summarizing information. I guess the split view is a little bit more practical because you can edit records from within there. But I guess you can with Kanban. You can drag and drop, but a clear winner there.
So Kanban taking the lead on that one. Let's move on to the next one, which is multiple profiles or permission sets. How would you manage that?
Yeah. So how do you guys go around giving different users different types of permissions or visibility of different things that they need? It does depend on the use case, Liam. Classic. Do you have loads of profiles, or do you have a couple of profiles and they're all different permission sets? Seems permission sets clearer.
Yep. So permission sets to 20 permission sets to one multiple profiles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also would agree. Depends on your use case as well, as most of these will do. Okay, so next one we've got is Visualforce pages or Lightning Web Components. I got Lightning Web Components is
we've got some good provocative questions here. Everybody's like, is this even a question? Yeah.
Great. Okay, so 19-1 Visualforce pages or Lightning Web Components, 20-1. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And this one's always a controversial one: data loader or data import wizard.
And we've given you the data loader IO option as well.
We have, yes, if you end up using that one.
So for those you importing, exporting, deleting, and updating or upserting, which is your tool of choice?
Interesting. This one's not going up or down at all. So I wonder if that means people don't like using it at all.
I have already voted, and it's not coming up.
Okay. Can you refresh what they say, Mark? I think it's crashed. Quite a lot of people have voted. It's just.
Let me see if I can go. Can I go back? There you go.
There you go.
Stuff's going through now. So 11 for data loader, 6 for data loader IO, and 1 for data import wizard. It's quite interesting, that one. I'm just going to refresh it one more time, see if any more's come in.
Yeah, sliding scale. Nobody likes the import wizard.
There you go. 13, 6, and 1. Okay. So going to move on to the next one now, and hopefully this will work as it should. Manual sharing or sharing rules. So
this is one that I actually can't believe we put in either, to be honest. It has to be, well, in my opinion, has to be one of them, definitely. Let's see if everyone agrees. I get the impression we might have choked a little bit on this one as well, Mark. Maybe we can
might have. I mean,
just from the fact there's none coming through.
Just go back. There you go. 17 to 0. Okay.
Oh, good. At least everyone. At
Right,
least
21. Everyone said sharing rules.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's pretty much everyone. So let's move on to the next one. And this one's new and but might be one of again slightly more controversial ones. Dynamic forms or page layouts. See how many coming through. So 10 to 7, 10 to 8. Go.
Quite
10
close.
to 10. So even split. Even split. I thought this one would be the one that gets 50-50, to be honest, if we had one that was 50-50.
And I guess this may change if dynamic forms is applicable to standard objects. Possibly. It's just custom at the minute, but it'd be interesting. Yeah, as Axel mentions there, I think it would be.
It is interesting, yeah. And on a side note, Luke and I have been chatting about potentially doing an event on dynamic forms next year. Although we'll be a little bit behind from when it was released in August this year. But I use dynamic forms a lot and kind of are quite high in trying to do an event around dynamic forms.
Got a couple of different use cases, haven't we? We thought it'd be quite cool to share them and yeah, see what you guys
absolutely
think.
Yeah. That's not an announcement tonight because we haven't actually scheduled that, but that might be in the pipeline. So that's a 50-50 split by looks of it. I'm just going to refresh.
Cool.
And just check everything's going fine. Yep, 50-50 on that one. So the next one is when the thing decides to move. Clicks or code. See, there you go.
Do we have declarative app builders or do we have code and Apex and Trigger happy developers? What's the split between the group?
Okay, so there you go. We've got 19 for clicks, 3 for code. Okay.
Yeah, a couple of comments to suggest both, but click first. And I agree. Do what you can declaratively first.
Sounds good. And this next one, I believe, is the last one. I think it's the last one, and it's compact or comfy. So in terms of like how you view your pages.
Compact.
Compact's going ahead.
Winner, isn't it? More on the screen.
Yeah.
For all those fields which nobody will remove.
There you go. So 18-4 for that one. And I believe that's the last. And that is the last of the questions. So that was just a little bit of fun. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And I'm going to basically stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to pass back to Luke, and he'll share, and he can share his screen. We did mention it on the slide at the beginning, but basically we're going to be sharing a bunch of stuff in our chatter group after the event, and we'll share the results of that Would You Rather as one of the files that we share on the chatter group that we have after that. But back over to you, Luke.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for participating in that. So now we get to move on to the good bit, which is the main event and the topic of the session tonight. So it's an introduction to Tableau CRM, but more importantly, it's an introduction to our guest speaker, Rikke. So Rikke is a senior solution architect working for Salesforce for Einstein Analytics, or Tableau CRM, it may well change. She was also the founder of the London Data Tribe, which I believe she'll talk to us a little bit about later at the end of the session. For those of you that are following the analytics journey, last month there was a big event, a big virtual event called Data Dreaming. So I'm not sure if any of the attendees got to attend that, but I did, and that sort of really opened my eyes to the sort of volume and scope and scale of the activity around Tableau CRM. And so that's really cool as well. So I'm really thankful that we've got Rikke to speak at our event tonight. And I think just very briefly before we sort of pass over, this is something I was personally passionate about. I reached out and asked for some help. Rikke was more than happy to come and, talk to us and share this event with us. So I think for anyone that's attending the user groups, I think they're a fantastic event. But if you have an idea, if you have a topic, if you have a speaker, please reach out and let us know if there's events that you want to bring to you, because this is something that I think is really cool, that Rikke thinks really cool, and I think it's a very good topic to share to all of you. But you know, it just shows that I think we can do a lot as a group. So please raise your hand for those kind of events in the future. But anyway, apologies, enough about me. Rikke, we'll hand over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen now, and
Thanks.
enjoy, everybody.
And thanks, Luke and Mark, for that introduction and having me. I will, oops, I just did something here. So I have to now log in again, just 2 seconds. Sometimes my pause thing is a little bit too sensitive. So let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen. And just find the right one here. All right, let me just switch over to the slides. So hi everybody, and hope you had fun with that little quiz. I thought that was really interesting. I might actually go ahead and steal that idea. We always love some Kahoot once in a while, but I think what's it called? This one is a good one too, because I don't know if there's any limits, but Kahoot has started to have some limits. So that's a little bit challenging to have some of these quizzes when we do it virtually. But enough about that. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to present some different stuff around Tableau CRM, which some of you might know as Einstein Analytics. We recently changed the name to Tableau CRM. There's a bunch of material around that, so I don't want to dig into that. So if you are interested in why and all these things, I would recommend you to go to Tableau CRM website and check out the blog that was put in around the strategic vision around all of that. I will warn you, I'm trying to say Tableau CRM, but you know, I've worked with analytics for at least 5 years. And first it was Wave, and it was really hard to start saying Einstein Analytics. I got used to it, and now I have to start saying Tableau CRM. So it'll probably take me a little while to get it, but I will try my best. So already done a introduction of me, but I thought I would put this slide in nonetheless. So as you know, my name is Rikke, and I'm actually based out of London, but I'm originally from Denmark. I am a senior solution architect, as Luke was kind enough to mention, at Salesforce, and I'm part of the ACE team, which is the Analytics Center of Excellence. So I'm part of the product organization. We're kind of, I tend to say, like a SWAT team that goes in and help customers, do evangelism, do onboarding. There's a lot of bunch of stuff that the team does, and we're kind of we're a global team. And I am lucky enough to be in EMEA. My Twitter is there, so that's how Luke got a hold of me. I tend to try and be a little bit active in there. The last couple of weeks it's been too busy, but feel free to reach out to me in these channels. So what is it that I wanted to talk about today? I tried, of course, I had a chat with Mark and Luke about what would be interesting from your perspective in terms of see what Tableau CRM is all about. And so I wanted to give you some intro slides that I tend to do to everybody, just because it kind of sets the concepts, it sets the stage for what is it that Tableau CRM is, how does it differentiate from the core reporting that we know. And then I wanted to, as soon as I covered the slides, I want to move into the demo. And I came up with a few different things that I thought that might be interesting, something that you can't really do in core reporting, core dashboards. So some of those things that might say, oh, okay, this is some cool things, and also maybe something that after this session that you thought would be cool to go ahead and do yourself. And then finally, I have a question slides and also have a resource slides. Let's just be honest, you can ask questions at any point in time. I can't see the chat, so Luke, Mark, if there's anything, feel free to stop me at any point in time, and we can take those questions either by you guys reading out whatever is in the chat, or people can unmute themselves and ask the question, and I'll try my best to go ahead and answer them. But yeah, I like to keep these very much a discussion. I also, if you have any kind of, something you want to see or don't understand of what I'm showing, feel free to kind of make me clarify that as well. I do have to show this because I'm part of Salesforce, so we love this slide, right? So our forward-looking statement slide, basically all it says is that if you should base your purchasing decisions on what's currently available in the product. I may say this is something we're working on as a part of the product team. However, you should base your purchasing decisions on what is available in at the moment and not what might be. All right, that out of the way, let's get straight to the slides. And as I said, I'll try and cut these slides as fast as possible so we can get to the cool stuff around demoing. I think that's where people really people really want to see. So we have a couple, when we talk about CRM reporting, we have a couple of different solutions. We have Salesforce standard reporting, including the dashboards, which I think most people are familiar with and are quite comfortable working with them. Of course, we can always learn new tricks when it comes to standard reporting, but most people know how to go ahead and create some of these insights. Then we have Tableau CRM. Tableau CRM is a little different from standard Salesforce reporting, because when you look at standard Salesforce reporting, it is it's querying the data right there and then. It's very static, and it's not something you can really interact with. And that's where Tableau CRM is different. We're actually allowing you to interact with the dashboard. You can click on anything on the dashboard. You can even enable actions, and we're going to see some of this later on, to go ahead and act on this data that you're finding, or these insights that you're finding in your data. Now, I tend to say if you're dealing with operational issues, operational data that you want to gather, I tend to go to standard reports and dashboards, because I don't have to pull in, data first in Tableau CRM, and then I have to create my dashboard and that sort of stuff. So that operational quick view, I just go ahead and do in standard Salesforce reporting. However, when it comes to those more strategic questions where you want to start drilling down into your data, that's where Tableau CRM really comes in. Part of Tableau CRM also have Einstein Discovery. Now, Einstein Discovery has actually not changed its name. We're still calling it Einstein Discovery. What that is the predictive insight. So it's looking at all this data that you have, and by asking questions of minimizing or maximizing something, we can go in and look at patterns in your data and come up with some insights that can help you predict the future, and also tell you what's going on with your data. What are some interesting facts that we're finding? Now, this is very cool in the sense that you can also detect these insights and deploy them into Salesforce. And when you're looking at your opportunity, you can look at these patterns as well and see if this opportunity, how likely is this opportunity to be won. So those are some of the questions that you can ask with Einstein Discovery. Now I'm going to try and focus on Tableau CRM for this session. I think the Einstein Discovery in itself could be a whole session as well to explain how all of that works. But I think when you're looking at these different tools, Tableau CRM, Einstein Discovery is in the same platform, and it's using some of the same concepts, where Salesforce Standard Reporting is kind of parked over in Salesforce. All right, so what is it that, how should you actually be using Tableau CRM? Now, I like to think about this as an embedded experience. Of course, it's great to have these dashboards and insights and all this, big dashboards that you can start drilling down into. But I think where you are really making a difference if you're thinking about it as an intelligent experience. So while you're conducting your work, whatever process that you have in Salesforce, embed different data and insights directly into that process. So what you're looking at here is an account page where we actually have embedded a dashboard directly there, telling you some insights about this account, summarizing all these different related lists that are related to this account in just one snippet of a dashboard. We can also go in and, of course, have the notification when something is happening. We have the option of taking actions. And then also, as you can see over here on the right side, this is where we have that predicted win rate that I talked about before with Einstein Discovery. So it's really that whole intelligent experience that you should aim for, and not just think about dashboards siloed away and waiting for salespeople or service personnel to go in and find these dashboards. Should be that embedded experience. Any questions around this so far?
Yeah, we've got one question in the chat actually, Rikke, which was good to raise. The question was, is Tableau CRM, which is embedded within Salesforce, is that different than Tableau Desktop, or Tableau as a standalone platform?
That's a good question. So Tableau CRM is what we knew as Einstein Analytics. Einstein Analytics and Tableau are two different things. Okay, there is a vision of making the product closer, but as of today, this is two different products. Okay, so Tableau CRM is embedded directly into to Salesforce. We're using the same data center. We are using the same security setup, the same users, the same kind of, all of that is directly within Salesforce. Tableau sits outside of that. As I said, there is a vision to make the products closer, but this is something that is more down the line. If you go into the Tableau conference-ish, that's a hard word to say. There is actually a couple of presentations in there, keynote. There's also a few blogs around what is it the vision is. So that might be interesting for you to see if you want to look at what's happening in the future. But as you know, for any kind of acquisition, it's not something that happens overnight. It takes a little time to get these products to talk together.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. So switching gear a little bit, I wanted to look at what are the different layers within Tableau CRM. The reason I want to do that is because when we typically work in Tableau CRM, there's three focuses. There is the data layer, there's the design layer, and then there's the intelligent layer. Now, if we look about the data layer, that becomes important because before we can get any kind of dashboards and insight, we need to have the data ready available. And I'm sure there are going to be questions of, well, if it's inside Salesforce, why do you need to put it inside Tableau CRM? Isn't it already there? And I'll cover that in a few more after a few more slides. So just bear with me on that question. But in the data layer, we have a couple of different terminologies that are interesting to know. So we have, first of all, our data monitor, which is a log of everything that is happening with our data. Then we have our data sync. That is the element that is bringing data from the Salesforce objects into Tableau CRM, ready to be part of our data sets. Now, the data sync is happening via our data connector. So that's where we can establish connection to the local environment of Salesforce, but we can also bring in external data, Redshift, Snowflake. There's a bunch of different connectors that we have. Then we also have the data flow. The data flow is where we take this data that we have now ready available with our data sync, and we transform it into a data set. We can do that with data flow, and we can also do it with data prep. But basically, we're taking this data, we are denormalizing it, and we're possibly also enriching it with more information. And then finally, the data set is the data store that we have. This is what we're using for our dashboards later on. Then we have the design layer. which is in our Analytics Studio. Here are 3 concepts that are important: our app, our lenses, and our dashboards. So apps are where we store any of our assets, so similar to our folders in reports and dashboards. Lenses are a single exploration of our data set. And dashboard has multiple explorations of one or several data sets that we're looking in one view. So I guess you can kind of say lenses is the same as your report in standard Salesforce, and dashboards are dashboards. And then finally, we have the intelligence layer, where we have Einstein Discovery. And this is where we create those stories. And then we also go in and deploy stories into Salesforce. So the creating of stories is where you figure out what is the kind of question that you want to ask, but also it's giving you all this insight up in front in the story, so you can go through and see what are the patterns in your data. When you're happy with what the story tells you, well, I mean, at least with the model of the story, then you can go ahead and deploy it into Salesforce, and that's where you're then able to score your opportunities, cases, whichever you have, whichever your data set is related to or your story is related to. Any questions around this?
No, I think we're good. Tuki, nothing's coming through in the chat.
All right. So since we all know and love core, I thought let me go ahead and try and compare some things. So we know our report types in core Salesforce. Those are what kind of combines your data, right? So this is similar to our data set. It determines, do I have my account? Do I have my opportunity? Do I have my opportunity products in here? It is, I will say, this is a little bit like comparing apples and pears. You can't make the direct comparison, but in terms of concept, it is similar. However, the data set is being controlled by what's happening in the data flow. So those two together is similar to what we're doing in the report type. Then we have the reports, which I already compared to the lenses. So that is that single exploration. Reports does have a visualization and the raw data. Well, actually, it doesn't always have the visualization. It has the raw data. Where lenses, we always start with a visualization. However, you can change it over to the raw data if you want. And then we have dashboards. They are the same dashboards. And then, of course, folders and apps are similar as well, as they're those that control the assets and who also have access to these different assets. Now, this one becomes really important, this slide, also comparing back to Salesforce, because I think where a lot of people are struggling when it comes to starting with Tableau CRM, and see here, I didn't even update my slide, so do apologize about that. But what is the main difference is the way that we're combining our data. So if we first look at standard reports and dashboards, what you're looking at is you're starting from the top and you're moving downwards in the hierarchy. So in this report type, we have account, opportunity, and opportunity line item. Also, unless it has changed, again, my core knowledge sometimes a little rusty since I haven't really worked with that for 5 years. However, I believe that you can only have 3 levels, and they have to be in that direct level, right? So, you know, you can't start having cases in this, and you have to start doing joint reports and stuff instead. In the report type, you have to have that direct level, and it's only 3 levels. Now in Einstein Analytics, we flip this around. So we actually start from this lowest level, and we move upwards in the hierarchy. So in this case, you can see that we have opportunity line item. That's our root. That is the grain. We call it many things. And then we start adding in opportunities, account, and owner. And you'll see here, we can be a little bit more flexible in the sense that we can go out and, you know, from opportunity, we're both relating the account and the owner. And on top of that, we can also go many levels out, like however many levels you find interesting to go out, you can go ahead and do. There's no limits to that. The only thing is it will have an impact on your performance if you join a lot of data. But in reality, I think most people in their Salesforce environment don't have like a hierarchy of 15 objects. That may be the case, but yeah, you can, in theory, do it. Then we have this question around data sets and data store, and why are we doing this with the data flow? Why do we have to take data from core Salesforce and into Tableau CRM? Now, the reason is because you might actually, if we look at standard reports and dashboards, you might have been one of those lucky ones, and that's a little bit with sarcasm, that has gotten that error message in the bottom saying the runtime was too long, so it was timed out, and please try and add a filter or whatever else it says. Now, the reason it's doing that is because when you're running in core Salesforce, you actually go in and grab the data from all these different objects and you join them together at that runtime. And that can be quite expensive. So what we're doing in Tableau CRM is we're pulling all this data out from your objects first, and then the data flow is actually going in and combining and denormalizing this data. So when you're running it in your dashboard, it goes a lot faster. So what we're doing is we're taking opportunity account and we put everything into this data set, and we define whether or not it's a text, number, or date, or dimension, measure, and date. So we don't care about pick list and all this. It gets converted into these 3 different formats. And then we index all of our dimensions, including dates. Okay, measures are not indexed, but dimensions and dates are indexed. So when you're running any of your dashboards, it goes really fast. So this is what we're doing. Now, how does this actually work? If we're looking at this specific slide, we can compare it to a book. So I might give you a book and say, hey, can you tell me where it says Mr. Pink in this book? And a couple of hours later, after you have read through all the pages, you tell me where it says Mr. Pink. Now, that's of course time consuming. So if you had in the back of the book an index where you can just go in and say, well, page 1, page 5, page 7, that's where it says Mr. Pink, you are actually going ahead and limiting how long it's going to take for you to find where it says Mr. Pink. And that's essentially what we're doing in Tableau CRM. So we're actually indexing everything. So when you're looking for what you need, we can go in and find it quickly. Summing it up, then we have our assets in the Tableau CRM. We have our, over here to our left, this is our data sources. So typically we deal with Salesforce data, but of course also external data. And then we know we want to get rid of those CSV files, but we can never get rid of them. They will always appear somewhere. And yes, you can also import that. In fact, the demo that I'm going to do later is actually based off of the CSV file that I imported earlier today. Then we have our data flow and data prep that goes in and take these sources and convert it into a data set. We have a lens, which is that single exploration of our data set. And then we have our dashboard that's multiple explorations within one view. And all of this is stored in an app. I did leave out the story because I wanted to focus on Tableau CRM, but your stories can also be saved in a app. Okay, and they're also working off of your data set. That's what I wanted to do in terms of slides. So I kind of want to see if there's any questions at this point in time. Else I will move on to the demo.
We don't see anything in the chat, Rikke, but if anybody does have anything they want to raise, please feel free if you would like to, you know, unmute yourself and ask, but we don't have anything in the chat at this point.
All right. Well, I want to then go to the demo and let me see if I have, now this Zoom thing is annoying me in terms of where the panel, so let's see, we can move it up here. What I wanted to try and do today is build this dashboard. It's not very pretty, I will say that, but I wanted to give you a little bit of different examples where I think Tableau CRM really differentiates from core reporting and where you can see some different options that you might not have or you don't have in standard reporting. It has a combination of basic, basic, intermediate, and advanced elements to this. So don't expect that, you know, tomorrow, if you've never worked with Tableau CRM before, that you can go in and do all of this. It might take a little bit more work for you. However, I wanted to kind of inspire as well and just kind of show the art of the possible. So that's why I picked these different use cases for you guys to look at. So before I get to that, I just wanted to let you know that the way that you get to Tableau CRM, it's really hard to say Tableau CRM when it says Einstein Analytics Studio, but nonetheless, if you go into your app picker and then you have the Analytics Studio there, you do have to have permission set. You do need to have a specific license to get access to this. I will encourage you, if you wanted to play with this, go to Trailhead. You can get a developer org that has this enabled, and you can play around with it and try these use cases out yourself. So when you get in, you first get to Analytics Studio, which is what you see here. We have over here to our left side the option to browse through all our different content. I tend to just go to our all items, and I have here my apps, dashboard, stories, lenses, and data sets that I talked about before. The other thing that I want to point out to you is this, what you have down here. The reason I'm pointing this out to you guys is because I tend to oversee them. Maybe this is because I've been working with this for a while, but basically these are some giving you some direct links to other places in the tool. So for instance, learning, very important, right? We want to have a way where we can get some more resources. Data manager becomes really important when we start working with getting the data into Tableau CRM. And then also I want to highlight this community down here. If there's any things you get stuck on, I can recommend going to the community and post your question in there. People are very helpful in there, and also the product team is keeping an eye on it. Now, I want to go ahead and start a blank dashboard. And I'm going to go ahead and actually, before I do that, let me just explain that earlier today, I created a few things. I uploaded a data set here. I uploaded this one, and then I did a data prep just to do a few transformations. And that's now this data set. So I'll be using this data set going forward, and it's about the UK house prices and sales volumes. If anybody is interested in using that, I can share the file. I'm more than happy to do that. So let's go ahead and click on create up here, and we're going to go ahead and choose a dashboard. Now you have the option to start from template. That is really good if you want to look good for your manager without doing a whole lot of work. You go to this one, but I'm just going to go ahead and start from a blank dashboard just because I'm focusing on the use cases. So here we have our canvas. This is where we're going to drag in whatever we want to show in our dashboard. These are the different widgets that we can use. You can already see here, we have a lot more than we have in core Salesforce. And then over here, you see we have the layout properties. These appear when we click here. As soon as we start clicking on the canvas, we see our create query. Those are the different elements, or these are the different queries that we add into our dashboard. Now, the important thing to remember here, this is similar to a report. However, we don't need to save these queries or lenses. They're part of the dashboard. They live within the dashboard. So you don't have to save them twice. This is just something that is part of the dashboard. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a bar chart that shows me the average price, house prices this year. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my create query, and I'm going to pick this data set that I showed before. Always remember to name your queries. There can become quite a lot of them, and at one point you're like, okay, which one is which? And so it's quite nice to go in and do that. So I'm going to say average price London. Oh, if I can spell. All right, So the first thing I want to do is over here, you'll notice that I have bar length, bar, unused fields, and a bunch of things. Now this here, what this is your measure. So I want to summarize something, or in this case, I want to take an average of something. So I want to take average of average price. And I also wanted to group this. So I want to, again, have a summary. I think it's kind of what you're doing in summary reports where you have your groupings there. And I want to group by area. Now you'll notice here that we also have East Midlands, East of England, and so forth. And here I want to filter that out. So I'm going to go into my filter here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the plus, and I can see all the fields that are available in my data set, and I can go ahead and say this has to equal London boroughs and hit apply. And now I just see what is London boroughs. I want to sort this. So maybe I want to sort to see that Kensington and Chelsea is the most expensive place to live, or at least buy. And finally, I also wanted to say this is the current year. So I'm going to put in another filter. I want to look at dates that are, and here you can see these are similar to what you look at in standard reports and dashboards. So I want to look at current year and hit add. All right, because I actually have data all the way back to 95. So we don't want to look at what happened more than 10 years ago. That would be stupid. Finally, we can go over here to the charts, and we can go ahead and pick a different chart. You can also go up to the suggested chart and see what is being recommended. So maybe I'll just go ahead and do something simple like this. And once I'm happy, I go ahead and click on done. I can now bring in, or you can see I now have my query over here, and I can go ahead and drag this into my canvas. There we go. Maybe I don't want to have it that big, so maybe something like that. Once you click on the or click on the chart, you can go in and modify a bunch of different stuff. So if you didn't want to have your legend, you could go ahead and remove that. I would let you guys go ahead and play with this. There are so many different options, and I don't want to waste any time explaining all of that. Different charts have different things that you can change. So just go ahead and play around with it and make it the best you can make it. All right, I do want to show one thing. I want to eventually add in let's see here. Oh, sorry. I do want to add in a reference line. So I want to put in a reference line down here that gives a number. But before I'm going to go ahead and do that, I want to go ahead and put in a reference line that is going to be dynamic. So I want to base it off of something else. So I actually want to put in what is the average of the house prices in all of England. And I want to put that in as a comparison. So I'm going to go in, I can click on my query, or I can just click on this plus down here to make it easy because it's picking the same data set instead of me having to pick my data set. All right, so this one I'm going to call average price. And I'm going to go ahead and do the average again, so just what I did before with the sum. And this time I'm not going to do any groupings, but I do want to apply those same filters as before, almost the same. At least I want to look at the average price from this year, not back to 95. And then finally, again, this is looking at all the different areas. And I just want to look at one specific one. And I have this area type again. And I want to just look at the country. Okay, so the equals country. And I know for a fact that that's England. That's because I know my data. All right, so now when I have this, I'm going to go ahead and click on done. And instead of showing this as a chart, notice over here, I can also put in a number. So maybe I want to put in this number here and just go ahead and drag my average price on top of here, and then we can see that information. All right, so the next thing that I want to go ahead and do is put that dynamic reference line in we talked about before. So I'm clicking on my chart here because this is where I want to have the reference line. And I'm going to go down and find where it says reference line here. Now you can see I can put in a static value, but I can also go ahead and click on this, and we can use what we're calling an into action or a binding. It used to be called bindings. Now they renamed it to into action, but you'll still find a lot of documentation and blogs around bindings and not into action. So I would encourage you to just kind of remember that. So first we have to pick what is the source that we want to take. So what value you want to take, and we want to take this. So I want to select the query, and this is the average price that we just did. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then you'll notice here, I can select what field that I want to use. It's pretty easy because I only had one field in here. So I'm going to go ahead, take the average of average price. Result and selection, that is the interaction type. Result is basically if I want to go ahead and do a, if I want it to happen automatically, where selection, I'm expecting the end user to select anything on the dashboard for this into action to go ahead and trigger. In this case, I want it to happen automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and click on just the result and click on done. You'll now notice that we have the reference line in here. And if I wanted to maybe put in what is the value, I want to put this same value in over here, I can go ahead and do that. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on the same symbol here. And I'm going to go in and click on the same average price. Select the same field as before, and you can now see that the field has been automatically put in. But maybe I wanted to say current year or house prices, average house. Yeah. Current year. So now you can see that that's being populated here. Again, I want to keep the result, and I go ahead and click on done.
Rikke, we've got a good question coming through in the chat.
Yeah.
The question is it possible to use a cumulative line as a reference rather than a static value? And the example is like a cumulative target or a total line on a chart split by month.
I'm not sure I completely understand how that should be visualized.
Katrina, can you?
Yeah, so
there we go.
my manager asked me to produce a lot of times sort of a stacked bar chart with a line across the top. So the stacked bar chart will show by month, for example, one value. And then he wants a line across the top showing the one value on a cumulative basis over the course of the year. So if we won £5,000 per month, the line chart will show an upwards cycle of 5,000, 10,000, 20,000.
You can probably do a combo chart, and then you can use the compare table to do the calculation. I was planning on doing a compare table later with time series, but I'll show you when we do to the compare table that there are different options in there to do the calculation.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks for the question and explanation. All right. So just moving on with this, and then I'll get back to the compare table later on. One thing that I wanted to also do for this specific chart is because when I start picking, I'm going to go to preview here. The cool thing about Tableau CRM is you can click on anything here, and then things are starting to change. Now, if I click here, you'll notice that the whole thing disappears because now over here it says no result. And the reason it's saying no result is because remember we had a filter on this one that says looking at not birds but England. So hence, in this case, this is not going to work. So how do we fix this? This is something I think a lot of people might, especially in the beginning, are not aware of. If you click on this, you can notice over here, I have widgets, so the widget properties, but I also have the query. In this case, if I click on the query, you can go in and see, do I want to apply filter or faceting, sorry. And faceting is that interaction that is happening live in the dashboard when you're clicking on something. In this case, I don't want this one to have any faceting. So I'm going to go ahead and say like none. So now when I go ahead and click on preview, you'll notice that I can click on something and my chart over here stays the same. So just a little trick to keep that in mind so you don't have unexpected behavior. Now let's take this chart and reuse that in a map, because something like this is better visualized in a map, right? So I can go in from my left side here and pull in a chart. I'm going to make a little space for it here. And I'm going to take my average price London. I'm going to drag that on top until it has this blue light. Now you can see those are completely the same because it goes defile what did you had when you created it and adds that in. But if I click on it again, I can go in and select chart type. And in this case, I want to go ahead and select a map. Now the map is going to default by world countries, and even though I'm sure because of Brexit that London would be by themselves, they're not a country, so hence nothing is popping up in this specific map. So what can we do? So here I can go down and I can scroll down to where it says map, and you can see I have map type and I have all these different map types that I can pick. There's nothing that is London Borough that would be too specific for us to have, but you can go in and have your custom map. So in this case, I've already created one, but you can go in here to the click plus. This is a permission you need to have access to. You upload a GeoJSON, and then you have your map that you can go in and call something, click on done, and you have this new map available in your platform. I'm not going to recreate it one more time, but this is the process. I did a whole webinar, so if anybody is interested in custom maps, I did a whole webinar on explaining how to work with these custom maps. So I'm more than happy to kind of share that later on if this is something that is interesting. But the GeoJSON is the biggest part that you have to go ahead and create. In this case, however, I'm just going to go ahead and select that custom map that I already have. And now you'll see that I have my map available in here. All right. And for performance, just for those of you that are familiar with Tableau CRM, reusing the same query multiple times is a performance winner and will make your dashboard faster. So keep that in mind as well. All right. So what I wanted to do is I also wanted to show how can we do more things, more advanced things with these interactions of bindings. So I wanted to say, well, what if I wanted to not have current year, but I wanted to pick between current year and last year, previous year. So I can go in and make the end user select what they want to be shown here. All right. So what we can go ahead and do is we go in and create another query. In this case, I want to click on the blue button because I want to have a custom query here. Now, this is a static step for a custom query where we just go in and define in our table the values that we want. So it's not looking at any data set. The first thing I want to put is the display value. That's what the end user is going to see. And then I want to have for last year and current year. So that's why I'm saying LY and CY. Now this column that I'm having over here is where I want to put in the value that I want to pass to my other my other query. So the way I tend to explain this, if you work with data and looks like people have been looking at data loader, you're probably familiar with VLOOKUPs, and that is kind of the same thing here. We're looking at information from one place and passing it in somewhere else. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select a column. You can pick from a data set. In this case, I just want to pick a number. And when it is current year, I want to put in 0, and I'll explain in a little bit how this works. When it's last year, I want to put in -1. Okay. So these are the two values here that I'm putting in. And you can have multiple things over here. For this specific example, it's just this that is relevant. I'm going to go ahead and click on done. Now I can take my static step that you'll see down here and pull that over. And I have CY and LY. Now, if I were to click on anything here, you won't see anything happening because these are they're not related yet. So this is what we want to do. When I work with bindings, I always save. So let me just go ahead and save this. So I'm just going to call this demo and put this in, because you never know when you mess something up and you can't revert back and you have to refresh and you don't want to lose all the hard work that you've done. So save when you're working with something like bindings and infections. So what I wanted to put in is this. I want to change the filter of this query down here. So this is going to be, this here is my source and this is the receiving part. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and you'll notice we have this advanced editor. So I'm clicking on the advanced editor, and we have again widget and query. In this case, you can see all the different JSON elements, the different parameters we have around our widget that are here. And then when I go to my query, we have all the different things that are related to the query here. Now, remember when we created this query, we said we wanted to look at average of average price. This is the measure that you see here. We didn't choose a grouping, so there is no grouping thing here, but there is a filter that says date, year, 0, and 0. So from year 0 to year 0, that's the same as current year. If we change this to -1, it will be previous year. And then we also had the other filter down here. But in this case, let's focus on this specific one. So I'm going to look at my source query here, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the static step because that's the one that we just created. And if the next thing we have to go ahead and do is then pick what information from the static step do we want. So I'm going to go ahead in the source data, but just click on the preview. Sorry, there's a helicopter coming over London right now. So I don't know if you can hear it. This is the preview of the table that we created. We had the display, we had the number column, and these are the two values that we put in. And this is the row column or row number. Now I want to grab this value that I hear in the number, right? This or this one here. But I want the end user to select query in the widget we saw before, current year or last year. So that means that this is either going to show current year, last year once you've selected. So basically one of these lines are being removed. So I always are interested in this cell up here that is in row 0, okay? So essentially what I'm looking at is I'm taking the cell, I'm going to take the first row, and I'm going to pick the number column, right? So this is essentially what I want. I'm going to go back now because do I want to have a result or a selection binding? I already said I want the end user to pick what they want. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a selection binding here. Now down here in the more options, data serialization, excuse me, has to do with how this information we're grabbing from the static stat, how are we formatting that? Like what is the output going to look like? Typically, I'm going to pick as object because that is the rawest format. It's keeping it as array. We're not modifying it anything. And in this case, this is what we're looking at. If you're passing it elsewhere, you might want to start looking at different data serialization. I wrote a lot of blocks around this. So, you know, once you get to this advanced topic, I would recommend that you go ahead and start reading those. I want to pick a default value because if the end user hasn't picked anything, I don't know what to actually filter by. So I'm going to go ahead and put a default value of 0. So you can see here, there's coming in a coalesce. So this is essentially how the binding looks. And by putting a default value, we now have our coalesce. So the cell, their source step, the selection type, the row number, the column we're picking. This is if we don't have anything in this one, we want to take the value 0. And then finally, as object, that's the serialization. I can now copy this. And up here, I'm going to go ahead and put this in. And I do need to have 2 double quotes, so I'm going to go ahead and put those in. And that's it. So now I can go ahead and click on save. And hopefully, when I go in and preview, you'll see that this is changing right here, right? So this is how you can start modifying your dashboard even further. And we can even go in and bind this information down here. I'm not going to waste time on that, but you can take basically any kind of parameter. There's some limitations. I would refer to the documentation of what you can't bind, but most parameters you can go ahead and take and bind. So I wanted to spend a little time on the time series and show how we can actually do some predictive insights. And apparently time series is similar to series, so my watch is acting up right now. So I want to create another query in here. And I'm going to go ahead and use the same data set. I'm going to go ahead and click on that plus, and let's call this time series. Right. Now, time series is basically a forecasting, right? So we want to look at X days out in the future or months or whatever you're grouping by, and we want to see what is happening. In order to do this, we're going to go ahead and use our compare tables. There's also a templated app that actually goes, or template dashboard that goes in and does this. And you can also use SACL to go in and do this. And this is our query language similar to SACL. We can use SACL. I might have time to show you some of that. All right. So first, what is it that we want to predict? Well, we want to take the average of average price, right? Then I also want to go in and look still at the borough. So I'm going to go in and apply a filter here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply area type again to be London Borough. Okay. I'm going to go back to my data because I also need to group by a date in order to be able to do some kind of time series here. So in this case, I'm going to go in and take a date. And you can see when I'm grouping by a date, I can do a combination. So I can either take the individual element, or I can take a combination. And so let's go ahead and do year quarter. And it looks something like this. You can see we have all the way back to 95. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is we adding in our prediction. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the plus, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this add formula. And this is where you can also use this compare table as it is, or formula, for other things. So what you'll see here is we have column A, we have column B, and column B is what we're going to go ahead and change. I can go in here, let's call this predict. So it makes more sense. So once I hit the apply button, this is not going to be count of rows or formula, it's going to be called predict. And I can go in and type in my own prediction, or sorry, not prediction, my own formula, or I can go in here and take one of the functions. And this is where you can go in and say, change from periods or running total. So you don't have to use the time series. There's a bunch of different functions in here, which is quite powerful when it comes to start doing calculations. So I'm going to pick time series. I have to pick what is the column. Well, I want to predict my A. How many prediction points do I want to go out? Now this is quarters, so it's going to be 5 quarters or maybe 6 quarters here. And then seasonality, if you know there is a seasonality, you can go in and do that. You can also choose the prediction model you want to do. I'm going to keep this as automatic. Finally, if you are dealing with incomplete data, so let's say you are trying to predict a month, but the month is not over yet, then you might want to ignore the last month, because else you're going to get some screwed predictions for the last month because it's not complete. So you can go in and click this ignore last. I'm not going to do that here. It might have some things to do with my data, but yeah, shouldn't be a problem. This is just demo data. So let's go ahead and click on the apply. And you'll now see that my column has updated, and it has now the predictions. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see that we now have 6 new values that are being predicted out in the future. Okay. People wonder, well, now I have 2. Why would I have 2? Well, we're still running the model for the other, where we already have data, and you can go in and use this to kind of see how good is your model, how good is the prediction, right? But what if I don't really want to have this? What if I don't want to have 2 columns here? Actually, let me just go ahead and close this so you can see this is then how it looks. And maybe I want to go ahead and change this to a time series. I'm going to go to my chart here and change this to a timeline. And you can then see I have these 2 lines. Maybe I want to have them in the same, so I can go in here and say, instead of small multiples, I have single axis. And they kind of look quite close together, right? But hey, again, why do I have 2? I just want, if I have an actual value, pick the actual, else I want the prediction. So let's go back to the option. And we can go in here and click on the plus, and we can do another formula. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say coalesce. You can also go up here in functions. I tend to just remember what it is. Sometimes that's faster. So what is the first value I want? Well, I want column A. So I'm going to put A, comma, B. If I don't have A, give me B. And then go ahead and hit, oh, actually, before I do that, let's give this a average price as the column header, hit apply. And there you go. So now I actually have either A or B. So let's go ahead and click on close. We're not completely done because I still have all the values. So let's go ahead and say, well, I don't really need this one, so I can go ahead and hide it. And I can also go ahead and hide my prediction. And so what's left is just that final value that we saw. And I can now go ahead and add that in. Click done, pull this one in here. Right. So now when I hit this one, you'll notice that as soon as I start clicking on my map, things are changing and I can see how is the average price for that specific borough and how is it going to look into 2021 and also 2022. I think that was the last prediction point, right? So, but compare tables are really, really powerful. You can also do more, and I'm not going to do this live. I could, but we're running a little bit short on time, so I don't want to waste too much time. But I went in and I cloned this one earlier today, and I did this down here, okay? So let me just explain what this is. So basically, I took the same time series, and I went ahead and started doing this in SACO instead because I wanted to group by, actually, let me just go back here so I don't lose you guys. So I wanted to group by area as well. So I wanted to see for each one of these areas, these different birds, how are they looking in just one chart, right? And I couldn't see that in the other one because I can only have one grouping there. But in SACO, we can do more. So we have this query mode over here. So I can click on that. And that just basically is our way of writing our own SACO code that we are overriding whatever you do in the UI, okay? So this is more advanced stuff. And I would say if you can avoid this, you should. But there are some use cases that demand this. And so basically what I went in and did is I took the same thing as before. So I had, this is my load statement. So this is saying, this is the data set I want to use. I applied the filter. Remember, I had the filter before. I also had a grouping by year, date, year and quarter. And I also then added in my area. Then we are now generating, so we're projecting, we're saying, well, we have the grouping, but what do you want to show? So here I want to show my year as year, and I want to take date as, or date quarter as date quarter, and area as area. And then finally, I want to have my aggregation of average price as A. Then I use a fill statement, and the fill statement is something that goes in and say, if I have missing dates, I'm going to fill in those missing dates. There might be some quarters or where you don't have any data points, and that makes sure that we still have that, or just as a zero value. And here I go in and say, this is then some specific parameters you need for that. You need to define what are the columns, the date columns that you're using. So here it's year, quarter, defined as year, quarter. And then I also want to define that I do a partition of the area. So I do a grouping of areas. This is the time series function, which is going in and doing the predictions. So I want to take the A value that we had, and I want to predict that as my B value. And in this case, I want to take, again, year, quarter, and predict those year, quarter prediction points. I want to group it again by area, and I want to predict 6 months out, or sorry, 6 quarters out, because I picked quarter. And then finally, I'm projecting all this stuff that we've now done. Say, what is it I actually want to show in my chart? I want to say the year and the quarter, and I want to join them together as year, quarter. And I want to take my area as area still. And then I'm doing the same coalesce that I did before, which is just saying, well, take value A, the actuals, if you had it. And if you don't have it, take value B. Sorry, that's apparently missing here. But trust me, there's a value B. And call it average price. Finally, I want to order it by my year, quarter in ascending order. And I'm limiting it to 2,000 values. You can add in more here, but by default, just add in 2,000 values. And then you'll see the result down here. I'm not going to go ahead and update this. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this X. Yes, I'm going to leave. But that is basically the SACL option. Now, what I did here is I allowed in here, in this map, I went ahead and said, well, let's go and look at the query again. Let's look at the option to go in and do multiple selections instead of just one single selection. Because the chart I had here before, I can only select one at a time. But what if I wanted to do multiple selections? So here I can go in and say selection type is multiple selections. You can also say you always need to select one or multiple, but one has to be selected. And once I have done that, if I go ahead and preview this, sorry, I have a little window here where I need to remove that to click my buttons. Now I can go in and select a couple of different ones, and I can go down to this chart that had the grouping of the different London boroughs. I can see how is the prediction for each one of them doing, and I can compare them to each other. So again, Croydon, if you don't have as much money as those people that are spending money in Kensington and Chelsea, that might be a better option for you. So this is what I wanted to do with the dashboard. I wanted to go in and look a little bit, just briefly, on our data manager. But is there any question at this point? I've been talking for a long time.
No, I mean, we don't have any questions on the chat, but I think for anyone, obviously, that's followed through on that demo, it's a fantastic example of the capabilities that you have there, so far above and beyond, obviously, what we have in reports and dashboard from core. But also people might work with other tools outside of, the Salesforce platform as well. But I think to have the capability within the platform built on, data that's coming from your system anyway, it's unreal. Like what you can do here. You've seen the dynamic link between different elements, between different selections, between different options. It's real sophisticated intelligence, which I think will answer a lot of questions for organizations.
So yeah, and that's a good point. So this is all external data because I thought it was a little bit more fun to do some of that stuff than just demo data from core Salesforce. So basically, you can go up always and click on the create button from the homepage, and you can also install apps. And we actually have a bunch of templated apps, and one of them is the Sales Analytics that comes with a series of pre-built dashboards and lenses and stuff. So if I go ahead, I installed this a few days ago. So go ahead and run this. You can see these are just some examples that a sales organization needs in terms of data. But the really cool thing about it, I'll let you guys, maybe install this and view it yourself. But one thing that I wanted to show that is also that extended capability is once I've narrowed down the data that I want to look at, you can see everything is interacting. And once I start having narrowed it down, I have my values table here in the bottom. And essentially I can go in and say, oh, for this account or for this opportunity, notice I have this little drop down. I can actually go in and enable actions for all of this. Sorry, it's a little slow now. But basically all the custom actions that you have in core Salesforce, you can apply that to your data set. So if you are bringing in opportunity data, if you are bringing in case data or custom objects, you can go and enable this action framework as well. And you can embed all of this as well. I haven't focused on the embedding here, but you can go ahead and embed all of these dashboards into a core setup as well.
Cool.
So going to the data manager, actually, let me just go back. So remember the data manager, you can either access it from down here in Analytics Studio, or the gear icon up here, you can also access data manager from that. Once you get into the data manager, this is what it will look like. We have our monitor where you can see everything that has happened in our org in terms of data for Tableau CRM. You can see a list of the data flow and recipes that you have. You can see a list of all the data that is available in your org in terms of data sets. And finally, we have our connections down here where we have our default local connector, but I can go in and connect to other data. So if, for instance, you have Snowflake or Marketing Cloud data or any of these, you can go in and create a connection to those as well. So earlier today, the data set that I actually created does not have access to, didn't have that area type that I used a couple of times. So what I did after I had loaded in my data set, I went ahead and clicked on or created a data prep, which is our new tool that is generally available from this release. And it's only going to be better in the coming releases. It's not completely able to do everything you can do in your data flow, but it can actually do some things that you can't do in your data flow. So this is going to be the UI that we're looking at going forward. So I pulled in my data here. You can always pull more select data in here. You can at any point in time, I can start branching out if I want, branch out to join or append other data if I wanted to. And I can also go in, you can see here, I can click on the plus and I can add transformation filters. I can even start aggregating my data and again, also join and append if I wanted to. So in this case, you can click on any of these to see a preview down here. And this is how my data looked to begin with. You can see here, I had my area, I had my date, sales volume, and average price. However, I missed that area type. So I went in and created a transform node, and I created my own custom formula that you can see here. So if I click on my edit, and you can have multiple transformations. Let's just make this a little bit more space here. So here, I went in and did a case statement. I will say if you're used to SACL, you have to remember that this is actually not exactly like SACL. So one of the things that tripped me up is I shouldn't have double equal. I should just have a single. I believe it's using the SQL instead. So just if you're used to analytics, then just keep this in mind. But basically, I went in and did a case statement that said when area is Northeast, East Midlands, and so forth, then, where is it? Then region. When the area is England, then give me country. When the area is outer London or inner London, then give me, then capital, give it the value capital, else give me London borough, because I didn't want to start doing all the boroughs. There are too many of them to remember. And ultimately, I then created this specific field that we have over here that I've been using a couple of times. I can go in and add other transformations here. One of the things that we're starting to look at is also sentiment analysis and other machine learning capabilities that you can apply directly for your data. And I think this is really interesting because a lot of Salesforce admins are not data scientists. We don't know how to build, these models, and we don't want to take our data out, build that model, test the model, all these kind of things to apply it to our data. and then pull it back into Salesforce in order to do analytics of it. So here within the same tool, you can start leveraging some of those machine learning capabilities. As I said, we're still working on this. This has been a long time coming. We've been working on this for years. And you'll see in the next call or in the next releases, we'll add more and more functionality to the data prep tool. Finally, here I have my output. So I can go in and click here, and you can now see how is the output of my data set, all the details around how it is. I can also go in here and look at the columns if I wanted to see just an overview of the columns instead of the preview. Sometimes that's nicer just to see, hey, what's actually included. And that's really all there is to data prep. So I think that was what I had planned in terms of demo. Any questions?
Is there any questions from anybody on the group? Again, I don't see any on the chat, but please genuinely feel free to just reach out and ask if you feel comfortable too.
All right. I also just wanted to, feel free still to put it in chat, but I wanted to cover just a few resources here. There's a lot of good content that are starting to come out. I can recommend, we have the team that I'm part of at Salesforce. We have these academies, and Ziad, my colleague, has done, actually there's a few others that have delivered these videos as well, but mainly Ziad has done these 40 videos on, again, now it says Einstein Analytics Plus, I should have changed that. But basically on all the features, including discovery, that you can consume at your own pace. We also have deep dive. So when I mentioned the maps webinar that I did, we also did one 2 weeks ago, I think, or was it, no, last week, I think, one on that sentiment analysis from the data prep and some of the machine learning capabilities that are coming. So we have like a 1 hour deep dive into some specific areas. That will be in this Tech Lounge video series. Then I put my own blog in there because I blog quite frequently every month, and I also have guest bloggers coming with different content. So this might be interesting for you to find, especially if you want to go through the bindings. It tends to be very popular to learn bindings from the blog. We also have Trailhead, of course, and that's where you can get the developer work through here. So you can play around with any of this analytics. And finally, I just wanted to say we actually have a lot of data tribes around the globe. Chicago, Florida, Paris, and London, which we actually have an event next week on Tuesday where we're going to talk about dashboard design. We're going to have a panel, we're going to have a demo talking about some different use cases and tips and tricks. And then we're also going to have one of our product managers that are going to come and talk about some of the cool things that he is working on. And then also your option or opportunity to ask the panel or the product manager, Arthur, any questions.
That sounds great, Rikke. So, I mean, whilst we haven't got questions coming through on the chat, you have got a lot of love for the presentation and the demo that you've done so far. So we've got many positive responses from people saying it was awesome, it was interesting, and the sky's the limit. So I think I just, again, want to take the opportunity to thank you for bringing that to us all. You know, I think there's so much potential there. And I for my own interest, I'm just scratching the surface. And, you know, I was following the trailhead myself. And when I realized you could combine the two elements, you know, it's really cool and really sparked some things for me. And I'm glad to have, you know, been able with Mark as well to share it to the wider team. So that's been really great from my side. Is there anything else, Mark, you'd like to add?
From me, not really, no. I think it's just been a really great presentation, and I would just encourage people, because I know some people had to drop out early, to kind of come back and watch this session when we put on the chatter group, and to also encourage people to watch the data dreaming sessions. I believe they're available on YouTube as well, and there's some really good sessions from there, because I went as well with Luke, and similar to Luke, I'm only touching touching the kind of the tip of the iceberg, I guess you could say, with Einstein, but I'm really trying to sell it to my company that I work for to try and get it in there, because this stuff is really kind of game changing in terms of like reports and analytics, especially when for a lot of us who are admins on the call, it sort of becomes your bread and butter. So if there's the facility and the budget to improve it, why not go for it? It's a really good tool. So that's kind of what I would add to that. But same as what Luke said, Ricky, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it, and it's been a really good, fantastic talk. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for having me and everybody that attended. Feel free, like I'm happy to put out the data set if you want. And I just want to again remind people that I did show you stuff that are basic, and I showed you stuff that are really advanced. So I mean, don't expect that you're from day one find everything easy. It is a learning curve, and you can get there. I tend to tell people, I mean, I'm not a developer. I do not know how to decode anything in Salesforce, but this is achievable if you just keep at it and are stubborn to learn. So yeah.
Great. Well, again, thank you very much, Ricky. And just as we're finishing off now, because we've only got a few minutes left for this, we're going to move on to our little closing announcements. And Luke's going to kind of go through the first couple of ones for us, I believe, and then we'll kind of wrap up the night after we've finished off with these quick announcements.
Yeah, no problem, guys. So just some quick announcements to share. As I think many of you have seen, obviously, with the global situation with COVID, that Dreamforce is going to be virtual this year. So the event, which you can see branded Dreamforce U 2020, check it out online. There's a couple of key dates for you. The opening keynote for the event itself is on December 2nd. And also there's the full 4 days of learning, which they're branding as Dream TX. That's going to take place from December 14th to 17th. So it's all online this year. It makes it much more accessible. There'll be a vast range of content on there. The key dates, December 2nd and December 14th. So that's about that one. And then the next is it's an upcoming event which I'd like to share to all of you, and it's a shared North of England event that we're going to put on. So we partner up with other user groups in Leeds, in Manchester, both developer groups, admin groups, user groups, the women tech group, also our friends in Chester as well. So we're going to get together as a group to do a shared Christmas special, which you can see on the slide is running on Thursday, December the 10th. So it's going to be, a lot of fun, some games, some raffles, some different things happening on there. But if you enjoyed today and just want to come for a bit of a festive meetup before Christmas, come and join us on the 10th of December. More details will be shared about that, but just a heads up for your diary.
Great. Cheers, Luke. And the last two quick little ones for us is to kind of go along with that, we're going to do a Christmas event for the Northeast users on the 17th of December as well. So we would encourage people to go to both, but we also wanted to do a one for the Northeast as well. We'll be releasing more details about that shortly, and that'll be hopefully quite a fun event as well. So that's coming up in the diaries as well. The last event from us that we want to share is our January event, which we have already got scheduled in for January the 28th. And this one's going to be all about Trailhead Go. I absolutely love Trailhead, and one of the things I've been crying out for since I started working on Salesforce orgs for about 3 years ago was being able to do Trailhead on my phone or on my tablet, because that's oftentimes at work I don't necessarily have the time to do Trailhead, so I wanted to be able to do stuff kind of out and about and on the go. And Trailhead Go is available on iOS, and there's also an early version that's been released for Android as well. So in January, we're going to do an event on Trailhead Go, and the way the event's going to work is going to be quite an interesting one, see how it works out. We're going to have two different groups, one kind of going through the iOS version, one going through the Android version, and we'll be having a look at that. The final announcement I want to give is on my side, I'm a little bit selfish, but I do work for a non-profit, and we have an event coming up in January called Non-Profit Dreaming, and it's still coming together in terms of what talks are going to be happening and things like that. But if you are on the call and you work for a non-profit, January 28th to 29th in 2021, there's going to be a really good live event happening across those 2 days for non-profit Salesforce users, covering a wide range of topics. And other than that, that's all of that from us. So we just want to say a really big thank you to everybody for joining the call this evening, and we're happy to kind of keep the call open for a little bit if anybody wants to hang out or ask any final questions. But we're going to stop the recording here, and say if you want to hang out, feel free. If not, we just want to say thank you very much for joining us, and hope you had a really good time and enjoyed the session.
Yeah, absolutely. Just what Mark said. I hope you come back. If you've got an appetite to see a particular speaker or a particular topic, please let us know, because we can make it happen. You know, I think you're giving up your evening, we're giving up ours, but let's make it on things that you want to see or cool things that we want to show you. That'd be really good.